Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07 here on the 7th day of October. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. And I just want to say on behalf of Julie Gunlock and Patrice Onwuka, Heather Hunter, Michael Shelton, Bill Hess, our program director, that we are completely and totally available to be the official morning show for Bari Weiss's new venture at CBS News. Maybe a streaming version of it, whatever they've got there in the mornings now. So what is it, CBS This Morning, or
I think
the thing with Oprah's pal and the woke football player?
Gail King.
It's bad.
Terrible.
It's really bad. We could start in a week, man.
Yeah.
Put the whole operation over there. Come on, Bari. Do the right thing. Congratulations to Bari Weiss. That's very cool. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the program. Also at 6:35, John Reid will join us. He's running for lieutenant governor in Virginia. Much to talk about in Virginia politics. 7:05, Jonathan Schanzer from Foundation for Defense of Democracy is on the October 7th anniversary. 7:35, Jason Miyares, Attorney General of Virginia. 8:05, Eric Trump. And 8:35, Dinesh D'Souza. That's a lot. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Had to get that out before that music cascaded down there at the end. It was 2 years ago today when young people woke up, participating in the Nova Music Festival just beyond the borders of Israel and the Gaza territories. And terrorists came storming in and began indiscriminately massacring as many people as they could and taking prisoners, hostages. In fact, many of those hostages 2 years later are still in captivity. And the world awaits as the Trump administration is trying their damnedest to try to reach some sort of agreement that would have Hamas step down, get out of power, disarm, and release not just the remaining hostages, but also the remains of those who have died in captivity. But Benjamin Netanyahu has referred to October 7th as Israel's 9/11, and I think that the comparison is apt. When you think about the fact that this was the biggest massacre of innocent Jews since the Holocaust, it's actually somewhat depressing that there hasn't been just outright, unequivocal support for Israel since. It almost seems like days after October 7th, you saw people protesting, saying, yeah, see, this is why the Palestinians need their own country. Yeah. They were literally immediately taking the side of the terrorists and trying to validate what their demands were and what they claim motivated the massacre. But make no mistake, despite all the protests and the marches and the keffiyeh wearing and the signs and the righteous indignation with the fist pumped in the air and from the river to the sea, they weren't motivated because they believe they've been colonized, which is a lie. They weren't motivated because they want their own representation without taxation or others, some sort of nonsense that they're trying to liken to the American patriots. They did what they did for the same reason that they always do what they do, because they hate Jews.
That's it.
That's what this was.
That's it.
Bottom line.
Yeah, it was really awful, particularly in Northern Virginia. I remember last year, at the 1-year anniversary, the Virginia Theological Seminary, which is very close to my house right here in Alexandria, Virginia, they had a Hamas-supporting reverend from a Bethesda Episcopal Church over to talk about, the plight of the Palestinians. And I went to that lecture, and I waited an hour and a half as that man prattled on about how great Hamas is, waiting for him to say one word about the hostages. This was an Episcopal minister celebrated by the Virginia Theological Seminary, and he said nothing until I brought it up, and then he seemed massively uncomfortable having to talk about the hostages. I saw the Alexandria High School do a walkout with keffiyeh, wearing students, saying "From river to the sea." So it was just astonishing to me, Larry, when there were still hostages being held. I'm just talking about Northern Virginia. This was all across the United States, all across the world, where we've seen these pro-Palestinian anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests after what is on film. These murderers, they filmed themselves killing Jews on October 7th. So
Yeah.
it has been, it has just been, it's been so strange, Larry, to watch this celebration of October 7th around the world, when what they did was, again, yes, you're right, it was the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and it has largely been celebrated. It's disgusting.
It was all civilians. Everyone says, "Well, they're trying to fight for their freedom."
No.
They slaughtered civilians at a music festival as they were waking up and
Babies,
dancing and celebrating
children,
music.
women, raped women. Yeah. Ugh.
Dinesh D'Souza has a film. He's going to be joining us today, 35. There's a brand new film called The Dragon's Prophecy, and I've seen the film. The first 20 minutes or so shows footage of the attacks. It shows footage. It's disturbing. It's by the way, it's not gratuitous gore. It's not like a horror movie. It could be if you wanted to keep all of that stuff in, but it's not meant to shock the system in terms of showing you horrific gore and snuff film stuff. It's not about that. The most chilling thing about the footage that you see at the beginning of this film, to sort of set the table for what happened on October 7th, is the fact that the footage comes from the live streams on WhatsApp and on other social media platforms that the terrorists initiated. They wanted the world to see this. They were proud of what they were doing. And what did they do? You have to see it to believe it, because the human mind can't really quantify and even imagine what they've done. But ultimately, there were... sorry, I just had the stats in front of me, and now I've lost the numbers. But the numbers... Oh, here we go. 1,195 people killed in the attacks. And when you compare that to the population of that country, it's far worse than the 9/11 attacks here in America. 736 Israeli civilians. That includes 38 children, 79 foreign nationals, 379 members of security forces, all at the Nova Music Festival. 364 civilians were killed and more wounded, and at least 14 Israeli civilians were killed by the IDF's use of the Hannibal Direct. That's for their in defense. About 250 Israeli civilians and soldiers were taken as hostages in Gaza. Dozens of cases of rape and sexual assault reportedly occurred. Hamas, of course, officials denied any involvement of their fighters because they lie, and they constantly lie.
Yeah.
A little bit more on this, as we have to reflect and recognize that it took about a minute and a half for people here in this country, as you just mentioned, to immediately take the side of the terrorists, including elected officials, including basically the major forces behind the Democrat Party. The prominent Democrats speaking out against Hamas unequivocally, you can count them on one hand. Josh Shapiro was one of them, the governor of Pennsylvania, and because he actually stood up and spoke out on behalf of Israel, Kamala Harris wouldn't choose him to be her running mate because, well, she would have lost the support of her base. When Democrats support the state of Israel, they lose their base.
Yep.
And sadly, right here at home in Northern Virginia at a local high school, it appears that there's an organization on campus who's using this week, the 2-year anniversary of October 7th, to celebrate and cosplay as if they were the terrorists. This is happening right in McLean. We'll share that with you coming up in a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Your next $1,000 could be one text away. It's $5K a day on WMAL.
2 years after Pearl Harbor happened, imagine a local high school here in the D.C. area with the Japanese American Club commemorating the event by dressing up like Japanese soldiers at school. It's unthinkable, right? Well, I mean, also partly unthinkable because Franklin Roosevelt, sent Japanese Americans to internment camps, but that's a whole other story. 2 years after the 9/11 attacks, imagine
right.
a local, the local Al Qaeda club in a high school here in Northern Virginia dressing up like hijackers to commemorate the day. It's unthinkable, isn't it, Julie?
Yeah, or let's do something that they love to throw around today after World War II. If a local Nazi club had dressed up as Nazi soldiers, unthinkable, right?
Unthinkable, outrageous.
And yet here we are.
The Muslim Student Association at McLean High School. This is Fairfax. This is spitting distance from the CIA headquarters.
Yeah, it's where they consider like the CIA kids go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Langley High School is also the CIA kids. Isn't there a high school? The Langley, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
They have announced, and we want to thank our friend Ashra Nomani for pointing this out, that this week, October 6th through 10th, the Muslim Student Association, and that's an approved group on campus at McLean High School, Fairfax County School System. They have announced this week is Kafia Week, where students are encouraged to wear a kafia proudly to school, and they say literally, these are the words on the flyer: stand in solidarity with Gaza after 2 years of the ongoing genocide. So they see this week, they see today, October 7th, as marking the 2 year of what they're calling a genocide. Hey, Muslim Student Association, what exactly brought on what you're calling a genocide?
Yeah,
yeah.
But it's so fitting, Larry, because the kafaya is a sign. It is a symbol of terrorism. It is a symbol of violence against Jews. That
right.
is absolutely what. So it is. They're not saying that, but that is what the kafia symbolizes. That's why Jews are so understandably upset when they see a kafia, because it means death to Jews.
Right.
And this high school, an approved club. Where are the adults? Where are the adults at this high school?
Oh, I guarantee you some of the adults will be wearing the keffiyeh.
Well, of course.
If you look at the flyer, it says, show your support by wearing your keffiyeh to class, to campus, and to work. Well, who works at the high school? So they're calling on adults to wear them too. And of course you're right about the keffiyeh being, it's a symbol of Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, and murder.
Yep.
Because who made the keffiyeh popular? Who wore it all the time?
Yasser
Arafat. Yasser Arafat.
That's right.
PLO.
Terrorist.
This is, again, I keep saying it's unthinkable.
I know.
And yet here we are.
To do this on the week of October, I mean, think of the Jewish students
exactly.
who go to it is so...
Imagine being an observant Jewish student going to school this week and seeing your classmates or your teacher wearing that. It's like wearing a swastika.
It is. It is the same as dressing up as a Nazi. It is honestly, as a World War II Nazi soldier, it is so despicable. And every single employee of these high schools who do not speak out on this, who are not outreach, it's despicable. You are standing by and allowing these students and faculty to convey a message of violence against Jewish students.
Yeah. And meanwhile, there are still hostages being held 2 years later. The photographs are harrowing. The hell that the families have gone through trying to get their loved ones released is unspeakable. And this should be a day where we just reflect on the horror of that attack, the lessons that have been learned, and hopefully, victory for the Israeli people so they don't have to live in fear and terror anymore. But instead, because we have some kind of moral idiocy within the woke liberal ranks, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to just point finger. Yes, I know there are Israel-hating anti-Semites on the right. It's nothing compared to what we're seeing. This is the establishment of the left. This is on college campuses. This is in academia. This is in Hollywood. This is in the halls of Congress for the Democrat Party. When a conservative or a Republican speaks out about conspiracy theories with Israel, they're ignored or they're laughed at or condemned. It doesn't happen here. One guy, John Fetterman, senator from Pennsylvania, used his X platform. He tweeted out a headline from the Jerusalem Post that said, Hamas celebrates 2 years since October 7th, calls terror attack a glorious day. And John Fetterman, in 2 words, summed up what every senator, what every American should say. F Hamas. It's 6:23. Coming up, more fallout from the J. Jones scandal. Will it bring down the entire Democrat ticket? John Reid hopes so. He joins us next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:37, O'Connor and Company. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Coming up at 7:05, Jonathan Schanzer, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. 7:35, Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares. 8:05, Eric Trump. And 8:35, Dinesh D'Souza. That's a full lineup for me and Julie Gunlock. But, Julie, we also have the candidate for Lieutenant Governor, John Reid, joining us right now. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning.
And good morning, Mr. Reid. Thanks for joining us.
I am glad to be with you. Only a few more days left till this campaign is all wrapped up. There's a lot on the line.
4 weeks from today, and what we've learned over the last several days about Jay Jones, the man who wants to be Attorney General, it is shocking to me, number one, that he hasn't had the decency to step out of this race. It is shocking to me that none of the other people on the ticket, the Democrats, have called for him to step down, or at the very least removed their personal endorsement. You know, that happens sometimes, John. Sometimes these candidates will say, listen, I'm running my own campaign. I'm not getting involved in that one anymore. But no, they still stand by him, including your opponent for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, they're all sticking together. I mean, do we see this pattern here? When do the Democrats ever abandon their own people? They double and triple down. And it's because the violence is a part of their plan. I hate to be the one to say that, but if you've been paying attention for the last several years, they use the violence to cause the social disruption that gets them what they want at the ballot box and then culturally. And that's what's happening right in front of our face right now.
And what's your message to voters as they're concerned? Because some people will look at this and they'll say, oh, well, you know, listen, he's got a D at the end of his name and that's all that matters. And, you know, that's all stuff in the past, or this is just Oppo research, or on and on and on. They rationalize their vote. But why is this important?
Well, do you want someone in a leadership position in Virginia, even if you're a Democrat, even if you normally vote Democrat, do you want someone who thinks that it is okay to contemplate the death of someone's family members in order to get them to change their political opinion? Is that the type of person that you want in leadership?
Yeah.
Or do you want somebody who's going to be much more normal and say, I'm going to work with you, I'm going to explain my position, I'm going to try to convince you, but I will never resort to violence against you or your family? I think the average person has to draw some lines there.
We typically have the right rather has trouble reaching out to women, and certainly in Northern Virginia, women tend to vote Democrat. We know this. But this is the kind of language that turns women off. I work for the Independent Women's Forum, and we do a ton of research into how to convey messages to women. And women hate this kind of language. What Jay Jones said is a total turnoff. Is there a plan to, because we can't rely on the sort of corporate media to get out there what Jay Jones said, and we certainly can't rely on the Democrat Party to say, okay, he should resign. What is the plan from the Republicans to get this out, to continue to inform the voter, particularly women, that this is the position of the Democrat Party in Virginia, this violence?
Well, Julie, I think you're right. That quote from the text where he talks about the mother holding her baby, her child dying in her arms, as the way to manipulate the Speaker of the House to change his vote, that should horrify everybody. Now, I think you're right. I think instinctively a mom would be very upset about that.
Yeah.
Now, the Twitter sphere is on fire with this. I mean, here we are on Tuesday, and it's still going. I heard that you're going to talk to Jason a little bit later, Jason Miyares, the AG, and trying to go back into that office. He's got $8 million, I think. So I would expect that we would see some ads pretty aggressively running for this. And it is, I spoke to 2 high schools yesterday, large groups of 17 and 18-year-old seniors in Central Virginia. And I said, hey, are you aware of this? And they didn't know.
Right.
They hadn't heard it. So I do think it's incumbent upon all of us who are candidates and who are speaking, and the surrogates and the people who go to church on Wednesday night, to say, hey, are you aware of this? Before you cast your vote, you need to know that there's some real consequences, and it relates back to the attitude of the people you're going to put in office.
Your opponent, Ms. Hashmi, has put out a statement saying if political violence has no place in our country. I condemn it. But then she said this: Jay must take accountability for the pain his words have caused. We must demand better for our leaders. What does that mean? What I mean, if she's letting him stay on the ticket and continue now to go on to glory as the Attorney General, how is that accountability? She's not demanding anything of him.
Yeah, they talk about accountability, but there is no accountability. They know that. I mean, these people are crass political operators. Ghazala Hashmi doesn't write anything on her own. She's hiding in the basement. She does like 1 or 2 events a week, all with her friends. She, here we are, 108 days after she got the nomination as the Democrat nominee for lieutenant governor, still won't do a debate. The only candidate running for statewide office who refuses to do a joint appearance or a debate with me. So, that offends me. And, it's interesting, Larry, she put out that statement to the press. She didn't put it out in her social media. So,
interesting.
She's just letting you guys and the writers at the Washington Post and the Examiner know that that's her statement. But she's not telling her people that. These Democrats, they know when to blow the dog whistle or when to, signal something to their crowd and when not to. And it's a subtle but very manipulative way of just trying to get credit for something that she really doesn't mean.
Well, your race is neck and neck. In fact, on paper, if you believe the polls, yours is the closest of the 3 races right now. So, John Reid, 4 weeks from Election Day, it's a sprint. Get back out there and get to work.
I'll be working hard every day, and I really appreciate the chance to talk to y'all.
You bet. It's 6:43.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Well, I don't know what's the bigger part of the story here. Paramount has purchased Bari Weiss's upstart journalism venture known as the Free Press that's only been around for, 4 years, I think, for $150 million. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Secondly, Bari Weiss has now been named as editor-in-chief of CBS News to try to bring real, balanced, and fair, truth-based journalism back to that brand. That's kind of a big deal, isn't it? But
it is.
I think my favorite part of the story, if I may, is how this affects the New York Times. and what a great moment of karma this is for the New York Times. Because
that's right.
4 years ago, it was July of 2020, when Bari Weiss announced publicly her resignation from the New York Times. So this woman who just built a $150 million empire that Paramount purchased and is now in charge of, as editor-in-chief, of all the journalism going on at CBS News. She's in charge of 60 Minutes. She's in charge of Face the Nation. Yeah. She's in charge of all these shows now. She got bullied out of her job at the New York Times. New York Times had her. They had her. Yep. She was the opinion editor, and she was specifically hired, Julie, to bring in centrist voices, new voices, different perspectives.
They couldn't take it.
Couldn't take it. They bullied her in the Slack online. The companies have Slack, where it's like an internal communications platform. They bullied her. Whenever they would mention her name, they would put emojis of axes next to it because they wanted her fired.
Children.
They would obliquely sort of shadow mention her on Twitter and talk about her without giving her name, but it was clear they were talking about her.
And what's so funny, just really quickly, Larry, you would think from what you're describing here, the bullying, the the desire to kick her out, right? You would think that Bari Weiss was some, far right-wing writer. She's a Democrat.
She's a liberal.
She's a liberal.
She's a liberal who doesn't call.
Right.
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
She's a classical liberal. More of a classical liberal.
She's a liberal who supports Israel and doesn't call people who disagree with her Nazis. That's what she is.
Right.
That's all.
She's a very reasonable liberal. She wants to talk. She wants debate, right? Yeah. They couldn't take it. But I just think it's kind of interesting because if you look back on how she's been portrayed, some people think that Bari Weiss is some, Megyn Kelly type, right winger. No, she's not.
Oh no, not at all.
And the New York Times couldn't even take that.
But these are the things that they cite to say that she's such a right winger. She actually allowed for Abigail Schreier to come onto her podcast,
yes,
and talk about her book about the radical trans ideology. The New York Times would never do that. CBS News would never do that.
Right.
Abigail Schreier's book was a bestseller. Bari Weiss said, "Oh, this is an interesting and provocative topic with a different perspective. Let's have a conversation." I don't even think Bari Weiss agrees with it. She might. She is out of the closet lesbian in a relationship with another woman, and many lesbian women are very resistant to the trans movement. They're called TERFs, Yes, but again, like Martina Navratilova, who also leans in that direction, she is also a liberal. This is not about some conservative takeover of CBS News as it's being portrayed. It's hilarious. Bari Weiss walked out.
Yeah. I was just going to say J.K. Rowling is the same thing. People act like J.K. Rowling's a liberal.
She's good on one issue, and that's good, and we love that, and we embrace that. But Bari Weiss, don't think Bari Weiss is going to turn CBS News into Breitbart. That's not happening.
Right.
She was an employee of the New York Times. She walked out and publicly cited bullying and harassment from her colleagues, lack of ideological diversity, self-censorship, and most particularly the influence of Twitter and other external pressures. They were treating a blue check mark like it was a Pulitzer Prize. They were treating journalism like it was Twitter with punctuation. That it was all this Mean Girl stuff. And by the way,
right.
True to form, here's the New York Times did an article on this, and here's how it's being framed. How Bari Weiss claimed one of the biggest jobs in television news with no experience in television news. So now they're even. It's Mean Girl, meow, babe. Go for it.
They are so jealous. I mean, the free press is like the hottest thing out there. Yeah,
that's right. Listen, good for Bari Weiss. They turned her into a legend again. But no, please don't think that suddenly there's this conservative movement at CBS News. That's not the case. But we're still happy for her, mostly because it makes the liberals at the New York Times very angry, and that's a very good thing. It's 6:52.